Chair. It is interesting that the government mentions don't want to take any more calls. Now, I would like to tell a little bit of a story from my perspective about Dunedin Hospital, because of course I'm very privileged to be the Member of Parliament for the great city of Dunedin. And in Dunedin we have a hospital, we have a tertiary hospital, and it is a training hospital for the medical school at the University of Otago, where Dr. Aisha Viril trained some time ago. Now that hospital, there's never been any dispute until today, where I hear from Honourable Mark Peterson that perhaps the tertiary hospital should be in central Otago. That is a totally new thing to be hearing, because it has always been based in Dunedin as the city that then has to do that tertiary level care for the wider Otago and Southland regions. Of course, those areas also need hospitals, and the issue here is about the big tertiary regional hospital. National has said lots of things about this hospital over time. One former Minister of Health said Dunedin Hospital is not going to be a long-term preeminent tertiary hospital. He went on to say there is a reality that can't be voted away. New Zealand probably has too many doctors. Over the next 10 years, we will need fewer hospital beds than we currently do.
What?
That was the Minister Bill English in the late 1990s. Talking about the health system. And of course we remember that when the Labour government came to government in 2017, the state of the infrastructure around New Zealand, the state of the hospitals, there were many stories about mould running down the walls in various hospitals around the country. And we heard then from the Minister for Finance, oh, well, this government, Labour, doesn't know how to build things because the whole of the new Dunedin Hospital isn't up yet. Well, at least Labour was building things. You can't knock things over if you're not building them in the first place. Now, National, to their credit, did say that they recounted from what Bill English had said, and they said they would build a hospital, a tertiary new hospital in Dunedin, and set up the Southern Partnership Group. In 2017, there was the decision on the location of the new hospital. And this is an outpatients building and an inpatients building. For anybody who's been to Dunedin recently and driven along the one-ways, you will have seen the new outpatients building that looks like a finished building. It's not finished, but it's looking good. The inpatients building is the building that the government members seem totally obsessing about the fact that it's built on a former chocolate factory, Madam Speaker. And it was so patronising to hear the Minister for Finance say that the Cadbury choice was somehow magical. It was not a magical choice. If anybody knows Dunedin, you know that there are many hills and there is not an abundance of flat land that is ready to be built on with significant vertical buildings. So this was a choice. It was in the middle of town. It was a choice that was made. And in that time, there was consenting, Madam Speaker. There was the acquisition of land as well. And of course, some of that consenting was done under a fast-track process that did not override environmental protections, because that can be done. Now, Madam Speaker, at the last election, when I was standing to be the Member of Parliament for Dunedin, National made many promises about this hospital. They promised that any changes that Labour had made to decrease the scope, so by 2 operating theatres, that they and a PET scanner and some shell beds, they said, we're going to undo that. Shame on Labour for making any cuts. That was their promise. That was the spokesperson for National, Dr. Shirley, now the Minister of Health. He came to Dunedin, he said that, and Honourable Michael Woodhouse, who was standing against me, said it over and over again. What do we get when National was in government? We just get cuts, and that is all we can expect from this government. Cuts, cuts, cuts. So I look forward to seeing the people of Dunedin and the wider South on Saturday.
What we missed in Mark's speech from New Zealand First, it wasn't a huge amount, but since Rachel touched on it, is that he said that he thought that the hospital should be built in central Otago, since that's where the larger population growth is coming. But that's only in percentage-wise. And I'm a little bit disappointed to have learned from his speech that we missed, that he obviously has not been to Dunedin, has not really looked at Otago or Southland, and does not know that Dunedin is bigger than the entire of the rest of Otago and Southland population combined.
I think a giveaway, if he knows a bit about things about MPs, called proportional population. Under MMP, Dunedin has always had 2 MPs. Under first past the post, it used to have 3 MPs. I think there is 1 MP that covers pretty much from basically around the Tairui border right up into Queenstown. I think there's another MP who sits around in Mihaka. Then there's another MP who's in Waititi North. And then if you get to Timaru, you've got Rangitata.
Yeah, so the New Zealand Constitution Act doesn't establish the size of electorates, but what it does say is that an electorate needs to be a maximum of 16 electorates in the South Island plus any additional Māori electorates, which means that electorates are capped at the size of 1/16 of the South Island. Which also means as Christchurch has gotten bigger, Dunedin and Invercargill have lost representation. And as you said, we now have 1 MP who covers this massive area the entire way from almost Wanaka, but Alexandra, Cromwell and Ranfurly, right the way down to everything except Invercargill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Massive areas that we're covering.
I mean, if we talk about that one, I mean, I think we need to up the number of MPs in Parliament, but also change the population quota from 16 to 20 for the South Island and readjust the numbers going through from there and shift to 150 MPs. But that's a separate thing. That's not about the Dunedin Hospital.
In her talk just now, Rachel brought up the Environment Court, the decision about the height of the building. And one of the options that National have put forward is that they're suggesting that maybe a floor or two could be removed from the current design of Dunedin Hospital. However, there are some real problems with that when it comes to the Environmental Court, which are why it went to the Environmental Court. For one, because it's on reclaimed lands, there was a limit on how high it was allowed to be built until they came to the compromise of drilling down piles, which is one of the things that has led to an extra increase in cost, the requirement of the piles. But the reason it is the height that it is, currently in current design, it'll be 60 meters tall. And on top of it, there'll be a helipad. At 60 meters, that'll make it the second tallest building in the South Island, but most importantly, it will make it the tallest building in Dunedin, so the helicopter is unlikely to crash into any other building. So around that area, you've got the current Dunedin Hospital, which sits at around 56 meters tall. First Church sits around 58 meters tall. Knox Church sits around 54. And then a couple of the university buildings were over 50 meters as well. So if they were to take a floor off of it, then there's a chance that we wouldn't be allowed to have a helipad on top of that building. What is the point in a hospital in the center of town without a helipad?
Yeah, that's also a tertiary hospital for the bloody half of the South Island.
The current design also includes 2 helipads, so that if there is an emergency and patients have to be evacuated from elsewhere in New Zealand, then they can land, and an increased rating to allow the military helicopters to land. Because the current helipad is rated to land 5-ton helicopters, but the military evac helicopters can go up to 8.5 tons. So they needed a big helipad. But yeah, this Environment Court decision is not something that the government foresaw in the beginning, because it's not something that anyone really would have thought about of, can we put a helipad here in the centre of one of the most densely populated areas of New Zealand? I'm not sure we can. That turns out, this is the workaround. The other thing in the options that National have put forward is they've also suggested using and refurbing the existing hospital building. And I believe Ingrid talks a little bit about it in her speech as well. But the existing hospital building was built in the 70s. It is outdated. It wasn't built to be a hospital. It was built to be an office building, and then was later retrofitted. What during construction was retrofitted to become the new hospital. And at the time, it was only supposed to service the population of Dunedin as it was in 1975, not the population of Otago and Southland. So it's not fit for purpose at all.
I just don't understand the point of patching up what was essentially an office building for how much and how long is it going to last? So just build a damn new hospital.
Yeah, like Rachel said, flat land is at a premium.
Yeah.
But you're in the middle of building a hospital. Why are we stopping and doing it again? Like, it's road that badly.
It's like half building. It's like the Wainuiamata road tunnel that stopped being drilled halfway through. That's a great way to describe it.
Or the terrace tunnel in Wellington, where they only built half of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the bridge pillars for the second bridge are still there, which are currently a car park.
But see, this again is an interesting conversation, because National had made a point about how New Zealand has been bad at building infrastructure and how they need to get better at building infrastructure, and yet they're not building the infrastructure they're in the middle of building.
Yeah.
Can we bring back the Ministry of Works? Is it too late?
I don't know. Troy definitely knows that one. Okay, let's hear from Ingrid.